Hey dreamers, it's time for another off-the-cuff video where I don't have a script and I just talk to you about what I'm thinking about right now. One of the things that I do fairly well is recognize macro trends, and it's something that I'm actually trained in to take a look at not only mass market trends and global trends, but also consumer psychology around those trends. And so one I wanted to point out today that I'm taking advantage of, and I'll show you exactly how I'm taking advantage of it, is the AI boom. And you can see in this CNN business article that it talks about the market strength has been mostly driven by a handful of mega cap tech stocks like Google, Meta, Apple, Amazon, and Nvidia. And that's one of the reasons why the tech-heavy NASDAQ is up 27%. Wow. But down below, it starts to talk about the thing that we're all kind of wondering about, which is, are we in a bubble? And in this article by analyst Nicole Goodkind, she talks about the fact that she doesn't think we're there yet, but it's not to say we won't be there at some point soon. And that essentially, one aspect of the AI boom that has been identified early is the role of semiconductors. And so you might start connecting the dots when you see stocks like Avgo suddenly spiking after years and years and years of just a steady, incredible growth. And then you even see chip companies who are really struggling, like Intel, also seeing a little bit of an uptick here. You see it also across AMD with the recent uptick here. And then, of course, the monster example of Nvidia with this giant increase from about $100 in October of last year to over $400 today. Dang. This one is incredible. And so when I see something like that, I really start to focus in on how could I take advantage of some of the exuberance one way or another, either on the upswing or on the downswing. Now, I just want to pause for a second and say this is where you're taking on risk because there's quite a bit of volatility. And so I'm doing this on top of my very steady Eddie 1.5 million dividend stocks that are just plodding along very nicely with extremely low risk. So I'm not advocating that anyone put all their chips on this. No pun intended. I'm just saying that if you have some cash and you want to try to play this, I'm going to show you how I'm actually playing it right now. So in a little bit more research, you can see articles like this on Yahoo Finance, the 7 best semiconductor stocks for the AI boom. And they start to list it out here. Intel, Avgo, Nvidia, ON Semiconductor, Taiwan Semiconductor, and Amkor are among some of the stocks that they mention, because they're identifying semiconductor companies that are creating essential components that will be critical for AI expansion. Now, the interesting part of this list is every single one of these companies would require quite a bit of research to understand what some of the governmental impacts might be on this, and some of the competitive levers and moats around each of these companies. Because among this group, there will be winners and there will be losers. As in this article points out, the semiconductor market gears up to hit the 1 trillion mark at the end of 2030. So the question is, which ones will be the winners and which ones will not? And so I'm going to continue my research over the coming months as I think about what my answer to that question is. But let me show you what I'm doing in the meantime to take advantage of the volatility. So I started doing research in Seeking Alpha, and one of the tickers that stood out to me was SOXL, which is a leveraged ETF that allows traders to make a bullish bet on the trajectory of the semiconductor industry. So let me explain some of the mechanics. First of all, let's talk about investment thesis, because whenever you're making a bet, you need to have some sort of a thesis. What is your hypothesis of what is going to happen? And my hypothesis is that this is going to be a very volatile market that's going to get a lot of attention over the next 10 years. And so my thesis is that I'm bullish long term in this particular marketplace. And so that thesis matches looking into a bullish semiconductor ETF. These are the holdings of the ETF: Avgo, Texas Instruments, Nvidia, Qualcomm, AMD, Intel, etc., etc. But here's what makes this ETF risky in terms of the mechanics of a leveraged ETF. So let's say you make a $100 purchase of a 3x leveraged ETF, and the next day it increases by 1%. That leveraged ETF should increase by 3%. So instead of making you $1, making you $3. But of course, if it goes against you, if it declines by 1%, it would actually be declining by 3%. So the multiplier on this particular ETF is times 3. Thus, it is not the kind of thing you want to invest in if you're really uncomfortable with risk, because it's going to move up or down very, very quickly. And so I take a look at SOXL inside of Fidelity, and this is where you can start to see the trajectory and the massive decrease that happened recently up until about the beginning of this year. But as we saw, there's tremendous momentum and tremendous increases across Avgo, Intel, AMD, Qualcomm, Nvidia, etc. And I believe this is a market that's just starting to heat up. And so, because this is a stock that I really wouldn't own typically, because you can see the distribution yield is low and the expense ratio is high, I don't really want to hold this stock, but what I could do is play it with options. And the way to play this one with options is to sell cash secured puts while it's low and rising. And so you can see them right here. This is the first week that I'm doing these puts. SOXL $22.50, SOXL $23. And I've got it a couple other places in my account. So you can see I've made about $1,000 between the two of these. And I did this exact thing in one other account that I have. So I've made about $2,000 this week alone on SOXL puts, betting that it's going to go higher and higher over time. And as we can see, it's already risen to $25.50 as I'm recording this on Wednesday morning. So I hope that was interesting to you guys to kind of see my thinking as a macro trend investor. And just to connect the dots for you a little bit more, you've seen me do this with oil when I bought a bunch of oil and then sold it off at the peaks. You saw me do this at the very beginning of my channel when I talked about how I sold everything off and was completely in cash right before the COVID crash. And then immediately after the COVID crash, put all of my money right back into the market, which I never market time. But come on, guys, when you see a train coming down the tracks, wouldn't you step out of the way? And you've even seen me do this with the regional banks, with my recent purchase of Truist, which I covered in another video recently. And so here's another macro trend play on semiconductors. And of course, I do all of this on top of my very steady long-term plays. This is just me looking at short-term opportunities and taking advantage where I think I can. Well, that's it for today. If you want a richer real-time experience with me, you can always follow me on Instagram or Twitter. And if you're doing your own research using Seeking Alpha, feel free to find the link below to subscribe if you want. No pressure, as you know I'm an affiliate. As always, I encourage you to do your own research, then implement and learn by putting it into practice. And as a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, so keep in mind these videos are for entertainment and inspiration only. I'll see you on the flip side.